It's been a while since we've talked. I thought first what I would do is review what I've been doing for the last couple of months. The first thing we did is go over a complete and full review of the program. And I mentioned that in a press conference where we hired one of the coordinators, but I had to go back first and look at me. Because I said last year I'm responsible for everything that happens, good and the bad. After 13 years here and 26 plus years as a head coach in college football, sometimes you got to look hard in that mirror and review who you are and what you are and start over. And I tried to look at the good things we've done, look at things that fell short last year, and move forward with it. Also talked to the kids about the coaches, myself. Had a survey from them that I'm the only one that saw it. It's something we've done 2 or 3 times since we've been here. We did it after the '07 season, and we asked all the players to put their name on it because we wanted to know who felt what, and that way I could go back and address it with each one that felt like there were concerns or things that maybe they misunderstood or why we were doing it. I had them do it about coaches, staff, myself, players. I had people evaluating our players and really everything we're doing from top to bottom. And then I promised the guys that I would be the only one to see the survey, and I was. And then as soon as I looked at the survey, I wrote down some thoughts that I felt like were right on, and I wrote down some of the things that I thought they had given me that probably they misunderstood. And then I tore them all up the next day and then started addressing them individually with some of the players. After that, I obviously had to hold the recruiting together and start the hiring process. We were involved in trying to keep our players aware of everything that was happening, which is very, very hard to do now because a lot of things are reported before we get a chance to report it to our players. You all even know some of it before we do. So I've told the players that that's going to change in the future because they'll have to read some stuff. We can't get it to them first. There's just too much information out there. Some of it is honest and true, and some of it's not. So what we will do is follow up with them after something's reported, and then we'll tell them whether it's actually true or not. But that we may not get it to them first, and that's something we've always promised them we would do. But things have changed from that standpoint. Hiring has changed very much since 1998. There's agents involved now. There were no agents involved in 1998. We've hired very few people, especially very few years where we've been involved in hiring 6 or 7 or 8 staff members. Multi-year contracts are much more prevalent than ever before, and that's something that you have to deal with universities with buyouts. That was something that we haven't really dealt with before. And the salaries are much higher. I didn't even realize how high they were until I started looking outside, and in a lot of cases some of our staff members were not paid near as much as some guys on the outside. Much more scrutiny. Hiring assistant coaches has gotten much more popular than it ever before. I didn't know how popular it was to those who follow it, but it must be a fun thing for people to do now. But that wasn't really the case. I don't even remember any of that when we first got here 13 years ago. So things have changed much more. John and Bill kind of kept me posted on who was following the planes and who followed the wrong planes, and everybody seemed to have fun with it. I thought that was good. And people have asked me, there's so much misinformation out there, but when you're dealing with agents and agents are throwing misinformation out there, and some people throw it out there, I was much more deliberate in this case. So in the past, we usually just brought a guy and hired him, and I really had 5 or 6, 7 guys at each position. And I looked very closely at them, and I was much more deliberate because I wanted to make sure that they all fit together. And that's a difficult thing to do when you're hiring that many. And people say, why do you care what gets out or who you talk to or when you talk to them? And you always want to protect the guy. If a guy is coming in to interview from his school, his fans are mad, his head coach is mad, usually the assistant coaches with him are all talking to him, his players are upset, his recruits are upset. So it's not about whether it affects us or not. It affects the other candidate, and especially if you don't hire him. It puts him in a very, very difficult place. So even when it's reported that he was offered and he wasn't, it's a very embarrassing thing for him. And so that's why I try to keep that quiet. In the end, we thought we hired a great staff for Texas. The average age was 42 years old. We tried to hire guys that fit. We tried to hire guys that were on the cutting edge of the new stuff, offensively and defensively. And we tried really hard to hire guys that wanted to be at Texas. That's something Coach Royal told me 5 or 6 years ago, is hire guys that want to be there, hire guys that have earned the right, and that they're excited to be there, and that's fun. 71 of these guys, with their accomplishments, there's been 71 bowl appearances with the 9 assistant coaches. Or John, is this just the 6? This is the total now of our staff. 71 bowl appearances, and they're 44-27 in their bowl record. 23 BCS bowl appearances, and they're 16-7 in their BCS bowl record of the 23 BCS bowl appearances. They've been involved with 12 national championship appearances. They've won 5 national championships. There's 1 Super Bowl appearance, and 5 have either coached or played in the NFL. So that's pretty impressive when you look back at all the guys being tied together. What has to happen now, you've got a lot of experience, you've got a lot of knowledge, and they have to come together as one and start working together as a staff. There's a lot of success, but they got to bind together. It's been fun watching them recruit so far. You take a guy like Jerry Gray, who hadn't recruited in 14 years, and then he has to pass the recruiting test and hit the road. It's been fun to watch him with his energy and excitement to get out there. I think Stacy Searles saw about 14 linemen in a week. He was on the run, just out there hitting everybody. So the staff's done a tremendous job, and they're working really, really hard to look at the offense and the defense and take what Stacy did at Georgia, what Major and Bruce had here, take what Darrell White's done in his different jobs as passing game coordinator, and get with Brian and the Boise system and try to put together an offense that fits us in a very short period of time here. Same thing defensively. You take Jerry Gray was raised under Greg Williams, and you look at all the success Greg has had with the New Orleans Saints defense and with the Redskins and with the Buffalo Bills. Jerry was his defensive coordinator there, and they're multiple. They're all over the place. They're a pressure defense. A lot of Manny stuff has come from the New York Jets, and it's very, very similar to what they're doing with the Saints. And then you take what we've been doing here, and you take what Bo Davis has from Alabama, which is very similar to what we were doing here with Will and Nick Saban, and put that stuff together. It's really exciting to watch them try to work together and make sure they put together the best offense and the best defense for Texas, because that's going to be the most important thing. The recruiting's been fun. It's been amazing to me that the class pretty much stayed together, that our guys stayed on campus, and after they went home, they've come back and worked hard to help us recruit. But everybody worked hard to make it fit. Major Applewhite, Bruce Chambers, Oscar Giles worked so hard to make sure that with myself, and then we put Ken Rucker and Marcus Tubbs on the road for a little while. All those guys worked hard to make sure that all the recruits stood strong with Texas, and that's something that has happened, and it's something I'm really excited about. It's been fun to watch. We'll address it a little bit more in a minute. Player meeting. When we first got back, I had about a 30-minute meeting by myself and just the players, no staff members, no coaches, nobody else. I basically went back over everything I've done the last 2 months, why I did it. I went back over their surveys. I went back over what I thought was important for us to restart. I told them that we would have a new offense, we'd have a new defense, we would have some changes in special teams, and they all had a clean slate. And that I was re-energized by what I'd seen with the staff in the hiring process, re-energized by what Benny Wiley has brought to us, and they would see that in the coming weeks, which they have, and also really re-energized by going out and recruiting and seeing the parents and the high school coaches and the kids and the fact that all the kids hung in there with us. But I also told them that I'd never been more excited and that I was starting over. And that's very important for them to know that 13 years ago I didn't know what I was doing, and now I've got 13 years of experience with new energy and a restart and a start over. Marcus Tubbs and Ken Rucker and Jeff Madden did a whole lot in football operations to try to help over the process when you start looking at trying to get planes to get coaches in here and And you have to do that at the drop of a hat. If a coach decides to come or you change your mind, you want to look at somebody else. And so we were constantly changing things to get a meal set up for them while they're here, and who do they need to see. And then the hiring process itself is different when you have to post a job, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time, and then you have to close the job when it's hired. So there were a lot of things that that had to happen, and people on campus, across the campus, the athletic department, and Marcus and Jeff and Ken and Arthur Johnson coming to help us has really saved our lives. Those guys have us back on track now, and we've got our staff headed forward. When we started looking at the process, we noticed that just about everybody had a head strength coach just for football. And that was something that we felt necessary. We had Jeff all over the place. So Jeff's still been able to work with Benny. They've done a great job of working the guys together. They're very similar in their philosophies, and Benny's brought new energy as a 34-year-old that works out with the guys. And he works out in every group with them, and that's nearly unheard of. I said, I'm not taking my shirt off around Benny. He looks good now, and I'm going to make sure I stay away from him when it comes to that. So I've been really, really proud of our players. They hung in there, and they trusted us during this process. There were very few questions. I tried to keep them with a text message or an email or something every now and then just to keep them posted on what was going on. But I told them, again, don't worry about all the rumors. Don't look at everything and believe everything you read, because it's not true. But when we do have something that's factual, we'll get it to you, and thought that was very important. I was very proud of the recruits, for all those recruits to hang in there with you all calling them and opposing coaches calling them and talking about all the negatives of staff change. They've hung in there for Texas, and I thought that was great. I thought they trusted me and our staff to hire the right guys, and they most of those guys didn't even waver, and I'm really, really proud of that fact. Some have asked why we didn't have a press conference every week. I thought the important thing, number one, was that you guys get to meet our new coaches. And you didn't need me talking when I wanted you to meet them. I wanted the fans to meet them. I wanted the recruits to meet them. And I thought if I took away from any of those press conferences, it was unfair to them, because we really haven't had press conferences for them before. And I thought it gave you what you needed, and at the same time it let everybody get to know them and meet them, and people could share the excitement I had with them. Secondly, I think I've learned after this many years, why call a press conference if you don't have anything to say? The worst thing to do is have you all come over here and say, I'm not saying anything about anything, because I wasn't finished. I was working really, really hard to try to make sure that we got the right coaches hired, to make sure that we were recruiting the upcoming guys, the seniors, and continuing to recruit the juniors. And one of the things that happens is we're a little bit behind on the juniors simply because we've had the same staff for 3 years. And they knew those guys. So now the new guys have to look out and find the juniors. It slowed us down a little bit on our offers through the junior process. So we're looking at that now. So I've been really, really busy. And the last 2 or 3 weeks I've been on the road every day. Haven't even been back in the office unless I have to come in late at night to meet with a coach in Canada to try to talk to him about who we were and what we were doing, and see if I wanted him hired, so and see if he wanted to come. But most of my last 3 weeks I haven't been around for a press conference anyway. I have been re-energized by the process, hearing the positives from the players just as I come back, and the excitement about a free new start, the excitement about changing the offense and changing the defense, and change up in special teams and moving forward has really been fun for me to see them, because it's really about the players. It's not about anybody else. I've also felt like that when you win, you can have press conferences and you should talk about it. When you don't have as good a year as you wanted, let people who won, let people that did the bowls, they're the ones that need to be talking, not the ones that didn't do well. I also talked to the players about we're not going to continue to talk about 05. When we won the national championship, we're not going to talk about 08 when we were third, or 09 when we were second. So we're sure not going to talk about 2010. We are moving forward. And as I said, moving forward like it's our first day. As far as special teams are concerned, Major will continue to do kickoff return like he did at the last of the year. Stacy Searles will do the extra point field goal. And that's something he has done in his past. Oscar Giles will have help from the assistant coaches. The other assistant coaches like Major will, but he'll do kickoff coverage. Punt block and return will be Jerry Gray, because he's been doing it for a long time, and it's something that he feels really good about. And then I will be involved probably with Manny on special teams. I've really done more in special teams in the last few years than I have anything else, and I think it's something that a head coach needs to be involved with, because it sends a message to the guys that you want as many people on special teams as you can possibly get. And Manny has actually been a special teams coordinator, so we'll use him in that role in many ways, but not take away from his effectiveness as the defensive coordinator. Major and Brian are working really, really well together as co-coordinators. They seem like the same guy working forward. You never know how that's going to work when you hire, and that was part of the process. Is Major was going to be involved in our coordinator's position the entire time, so I had to make sure that whoever I brought in to work with him, because we wanted some new offensive ideas, it would be able to work. And the chemistry between those two has just been amazing. Same thing with Jeff Madden and Benny. When Jeff's running everything, you had to bring in a guy that would fit in the philosophy here and be able to work with Jeff and move forward. And he has mentored Benny for many, many years, and that was an easy process. Plus, Benny worked with the Cowboys, and he got a great reputation early from that standpoint. And the same thing when you hire Jerry with all his experience to come in and work with Manny. Because the secondary coach and the linebacker coach coordinator have to work very, very closely together. And I've been very, very excited about the chemistry that I've seen in those areas and in those groups, and that's working really, really well. The fact that we were able to announce Longhorn Network joining with ESPN is unbelievable to me. I think it's amazing to see what Chris Plonsky and Bill Powers and DeLoss were able to put together. There's nothing like it in sports, which is just unbelievable. It will be great for our university, but it's also going to be great for every sport. And it's something that we're starting to realize now. There will be a lot of programming ideas that we have to come up with, and it's something that we've got to see how we're going to use it in football. Do you have your pro day on it? Do you have the off season on it some days? Do you have guys going out in the community, whether it's to the hospital to see sick children? Do you have to get a waiver to put that on national TV? You'll have some kids that want to work in communications, and what a great way for them to do some internships with Longhorn Network and ESPN. So we're looking at all those possibilities right now, and it's really exciting for us to have something that no one else has. It'll obviously be great for recruiting, but we think it's also something to let people have more behind-the-scenes looks at what we do without giving up everything. So we've got to look at what that means and where we go with it. And lastly, 13 years ago, Coach Roll told me that I said, what had been wrong with Texas football? And he said, people were all over the place. Nobody pulled together. And I thought we got splintered a little bit as a fan base and a group last year, and it's time for us to pull back together and be like we were in '98 and start. Because when everybody, the fans, the alumni, our lettermen, high school coaches, everybody pulls together for one, this is a powerful place. And it's time for us to go back to work and make sure we get back where we need to be.